Hello and welcome to Blueprints for Life. I'm Peter C. Hayward,
I'm Nicole Cutler.
and this is our podcast about making your brain work for you and thinking about systems and models and etc. And before we start, Nicole, I have a proposition for you. I've been thinking about this one. I'm very excited.
Wait, no, things to add from last show?
No follow-up. No, just a
Oh, okay.
proposition. My
Okay, what's the proposition?
proposition. Okay, so you and I struggle with this where we want to talk about instances from our life, but you have to kind of anonymize it. So you have to be like, yeah, a person at some point in a thing that's not relevant to today, but also they were in, like, we have to do all these disclaimers to make sure we're not accidentally like naming and shaming someone on the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
My proposal is we don't do that. We name and shame. No, that's no. I've come up with a system which is appropriate for this show, which I'm calling the Golf Club. So, you and I have historically, for over a decade now, been in a golf club. And despite the fact that we live in different states and neither of us play golf, every single anecdote we tell from now on takes place in the golf club. So we don't have to say, like, someone I worked with and try to anonymize it. We just be like, oh, yeah, one time in the golf club, we ran into this situation. Or one time in the golf club, this happened. It's our catch-all anonymizing term. Does that make sense?
We could just use fake names like we did last time, though I can't
No,
remember the wonderful
the
ones
golf
that you
club.
gave. The golf club.
The
It's the
golf
only time
club.
that I
And
will
then
belong to a golf club, so I'm down.
that's what I was thinking. I was like, neither of us are likely to actually join a golf club for real. And then I realized a little bonus facet of it. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
We can call our audience the golf club. So if you want to support the show, jump onto Patreon and join the golf club.
And then we might name and shame you, apparently.
No, because it's good and bad. So every Miss Heidi is in the golf club, Alyssa is in the golf club, my girlfriends, your husband, your ex, our kids, everyone's in the golf club. My sisters, we can just say the golf club, and you have no way of knowing who anyone is.
The circle of lives that is Peter and Nicole. Okay.
Yes, the golf club. What
Okay.
do you think?
The golf club. It's random, but I'm here for it.
That is all the follow-up or other business of the golf club. So, what are we talking about today, Nicole?
We are talking about rules brain. What is rules brain, Peter, as you take a sip of your drink?
So, rules brain is I think possibly the term that you and I use the most, like above even giraffe person. Rules brain is one of the first models that we kind of came up with together, and I think the one that is most often relevant and most often used.
It's one of the ones I'm most proud of because I think that this came up organically in a conversation. It's not something that we pulled from knowing or reading an article that we interpreted in a specific way. It's just ours and no one can have it.
Yeah, yeah. No one is allowed to listen to this episode unless you're in the golf club, in which case you're welcome to listen to the entire thing. It's a very exclusive club. So I was thinking because we talked about we weren't able to record last week, so this has been on my brain for a while now, and I was thinking about how to define it. And the definition I came up with rules brain, I'm curious if you agree, because it's one of those informal things that we use. It doesn't have a strict definition. So I was trying to define a sort of intangible term. The definition I came up with golf. The definition I came up with for rules brain was this idea, not this idea, because we're not doing it consciously, this habit of the second you turn away from something, assuming that thing is going to be static forever. And then when you revisit it, being surprised that it changed. Is that aligned with your thinking of rules brain?
Yeah, like a subconscious inability to reevaluate a circumstance
When it's
as you've
not in
learned
your
it.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be something that's in your face. Like sometimes I forget that my kids are growing as I'm seeing them. And then all of a sudden the shirt doesn't fit them anymore. And I have to like reevaluate whether their entire drawer needs to be completely overhauled and replaced.
My genuine impulsive response there was to be like, "Oh, rules brain." Yes, Peter. That's that's why it was brought up. So I want to talk about two adjacent kind of things that I think relate to rules brain, but is not how we got to rules brain. One of them is called object permanence, which is a very basic idea in especially like human growth, but also different animals and stuff like that. Which is when you're not looking at the thing, does it exist to you? So as fully functioning adults, we have object permanence. I am aware that you exist even when I'm not looking at your face. Below a certain age, kids do not have object permanence. So when when they get to the stage of understanding that their mother exists and then their mother is not visible, they freak out because like that mother no longer exists and will never exist again. And then this is how peekaboo works. This is literally the idea behind peekaboo, is that they don't have object permanence. So you're basically erasing something from history by taking it out of their eyesight and then returning it again. And object permanence, I know, is a big thing for people with ADHD. And I am whatever kind of neurospicy I am. I have real problems with object permanence. So my fridge is very carefully organized so that the vegetables are not at the bottom in a drawer where they will literally rot because I never think about them. But like the most prominent shelf that they can be. So when I open my fridge, I'm like, oh, right, vegetables exist. That's right. And I have a fruit bowl so that when I walk into my kitchen, I can be like, oh, right, fruit exists. Whereas the stuff that I'm going to enjoy anyway, like the soft drinks and the candy and all that kind of stuff, that's what I tuck away in a drawer because I have a perfect object permanence for those. I always am aware that unhealthy snacks exist.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting that you're relating that to being to having neurospicy capabilities. Neurospicy brain, because I feel that my rules brain. The times I most frequently experience rules brain is when I'm doing something relating to like my ADHD, and I guess I have a touch of autism, I guess, but
we're all special in our own unique ways. We do a podcast about seeing the world through models. You can assume that there's something going on in our brains.
But the interesting thing is I actually pursued a diagnosis of ADHD, like a formal diagnosis, a very expensive formal diagnosis of ADHD, not because I desperately needed the medication, but because I couldn't accept it as a barrier of what I was doing if it wasn't like acknowledged by someone else. If I was just deciding one day that I was ADHD, it did not that was just not possible. I needed someone else to validate it, to change like the way my brain understood and accepted it.
Yeah, which is almost its own form of rules brain, but I feel like at that point we're splintering up. The other kind of thing, the Jason topic I want to talk about was theory of mind, which is something I only learned about in the last 10 years or so. And theory of mind is this understanding that other people know things that you don't know, and other people don't know things that you do know. And again, this sounds very obvious as a functioning adult, but they've got this test that they do on kids to try to identify the age at which we develop theory of mind. And it's a really fun test. They have a pencil case and they give it to a kid and they say, "What's in this pencil case?" And the kid says, "Pencils." They open up the pencil case, it's full of M&Ms. Kid's like, "Whoa, M&Ms, that's crazy." They close the pencil case and they say, "Over there is a child who has never seen this pencil case. If I show this to them, what will they say is in it?" And below a certain age, kids go M&Ms. Like, obviously, because they know that there's M&Ms in the pencil case and they cannot comprehend this idea that other people don't have the information that they know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I experience this a lot of times in the golf club.
In the golf club.
When I have to.
Isn't it perfect?
It's perfect. It's perfect if I can remember it. I experience this a lot of times in the golf club when I have to explain aspects of my job, just aspects of the golf club to someone else that I'm, working with at the golf club. And sometimes I find myself saying, I can speed through this if you already know. Like, if you already know this, right. And I'm really anxious almost to the point of to the idea that I'm explaining something that they obviously know. I have such a hard time gauging what is a reasonable thing for people to know and what is unique to my brain. And I've never actually had a word for it. So there we go.
Yeah, I have the exact opposite problem, which is that I tend to over-explain things, not just because I like explaining things. Again, we do a podcast explaining things. This is kind of
just like being patronizing.
But because I hate the feeling of obviously this, and I'm like, how was I meant to know that? In what world, and this comes up a lot for me, as a neurospicy person, as a foreigner, as a whatever, people are just obviously this, you idiot. And I'm like, how was I possibly supposed to know about this?
That makes a lot of sense because you are someone who needs things to be very explicit in instruction
Yes.
and intent. You don't like inferring. You just tell me what action you would like me to
Tell
take.
me the thing. So theory of mind, I think, is an interesting one, and one of the places you can really commonly see it is in like comment. This is going to be very obscure, but like very specific comments on Let's Plays, which is like people playing through video games, and people who have played the video game before and know the right path are often like, "How are you not going the right way?" And it's like you didn't know either. You, the first time you played, didn't know this was the right path, but because you're watching someone else play it for the first time, you're unable to apply that theory of mind and understand that they don't know what it is. There's a movie and a comic called Watchmen. It's also a TV series, but specifically there's a movie and a comic. And there's a twist where one of the characters turns out to be another character, basically. And the first time I saw the movie, it blew me away. I was like, wow, what a twist. And everyone who'd read the comic was like, they made that so obvious. They made it so obvious that this character is this other character. And then I went and read the comic, and the first panel, I was like, oh, it's really obvious that this is the same person. It's theory of mind. Like, once you know a thing, it's impossible to unknow it. That's the curse of knowledge, which is an adjacent model. We're just blasting through them all in our intro today. But I think I just wanted to talk about, theory of mind and object permanence as things that are, I think, very relevant, but not exactly the same as rules brain. Yes. So rules brain comes up a lot with us. One time at the golf club, we had a big name sponsor. And I was like, man, what a great sponsor. This is so much money for the golf club. And then years later, I was like, hey, I should reach out to the sponsor again. You were like, Peter, that sponsor doesn't really make money anymore. And I just, even though I knew that, like I could have at any point glanced over and seen that, I hadn't revisited the information in my mind. And so it was
Hmm.
a very classic case of rules brain where a precedent had been set. And even though the situation had changed, in my mind, it was still the first, the way that it was, because rules brain means nothing ever changes. Things are, are constantly the same.
I think the first time it occurred to me, and this may be where we kind of coined the phrase when we started utilizing it, is when we were talking about motherhood for me. I'm sorry, when we talked about me giving birth to my golf clubs. Um, I was really struggling the first few years of motherhood, and Peter was shocked by this because, from his perspective, I'd always wanted to be a mom. It's something I talked about. It's part of what broke up my first marriage. Peter was the other part.
Sorry. It's part of what broke up your first partnership in the golf club.
Yes, that's what it was. It's going to be obnoxious by the end of this episode.
Well, we're doing it. It's gonna run for the whole series. This is our life
All in.
now.
Okay. All right.
The golf club.
So being a mom was really important to me. And so Peter was surprised by the fact that I was struggling with it and that, the feelings weren't exclusively happy, right? And that is its own instance of rules brain, I think. But also the idea that I wanted kids so badly was a different form of rules brain. Until I was 30 or so, it didn't occur to me that there were a large number of people who just actively thought about it and decided, I don't want kids. I thought that was a rarity. And so having kids was just, for me, the next step to take. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very glad that I have them. I love my kids. I do not regret it for a second. I mean, I regret it sometimes, but usually I don't regret it. But it didn't even occur to me as there being an option, a choice. It was just the next step to take, and I was frustrated that I wasn't taking that step. And that is when I realized that I had a rules brain.
Yeah, it's funny because I very much suffer from rules brain, but also I genuinely think one of my strengths as a person is this ability to kind of like disconnect from what I should do, like the default action. There's a thing called the relationship escalator. It's a term used in poly to talk about how polyamory doesn't match the relationship escalator. So the relationship escalator is you meet, you go on a date, you do kisses, you do sex, you do exclusivity, I guess typically that would come before sex for a lot of people. You do moving in together, you do getting engaged, you do getting married, you do having kids. Like that's the relationship escalator. And the idea is once you step onto a relationship with someone, there is a natural progression that the escalator just takes you on. That is the default. That is the rules brain way of doing it. Whereas polyamory, because right from the first step, we're kind of like different in terms of how we do relationships than the heteronormative monogamous blah blah blah. Part of it is just realizing, hey, you don't have to do these steps ever, or in that order, or with only one person. I will talk about my girlfriend because it wasn't until she discovered polyamory that she realized she didn't have to live with someone. She didn't have to so she's polyamorous, but like has never actually dated multiple people. But polyamory, she is keen to, just is very, very, very busy with work. But polyamory was a doorway into not the relationship escalator, which it turns out is her ideal relationship format. Like, we don't live together. We have no plans to live together. Every time we go to Vegas or we pass a place with marriage, we make a joke about getting married because we just don't want to get married to each other. Not because we don't love each other, not because we don't intend to be together for many, many years, just because we're not on that escalator. Because not being on that escalator is what makes us happy. So even though, like I said, I as other examples will come up, where you'll be like, man, Peter, rules brain is really a thing for you. When it comes to what kind of job to have, what kind of relationship to have, what kind of hair color to have, what kind of fashion to have, what kind of gender normativity to have, like, I have never been not never, literally, I can point to 1,000 examples, but like, I am very good at just stepping outside of what I should do and being like, okay, what works best for me, not what is the strictly correct thing to do by society's standards.
It's interesting to recognize how society plays into some forms of it.
Yeah. I would say that, and I don't think you'll take this as an insult, I often describe you as one of my most normie friends, not because you're uninteresting at all, you're very interesting, but because you do tend to default to the societal way of thinking. Like, you step out of it very consciously, but your kind of first reaction, I think, are you insulted?
You're calling me a sheep.
Yeah, that's such a better way to put it.
Club.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the language. Yes, you're a sheep. That's my main thought about you all the time. No, it's just that, like, it can be interesting to approach you with questions and be like, because I just don't know. I'm so far outside of society with so many of my weird ways. Even the fact that I left my country is a very strange thing to do statistically. And so I do find it useful to be like, hey, Nicole, what's the how does this work in normal life? And you'll be like,
how do you
here is how that works.
How do you socialize?
How do you people do it? So I guess I'm discovering that rules brain is sort of examining assumptions, or not even assumptions, examining the way that you understand things again. or rules brain is more specifically not doing that.
I think rules brain also plays into first impressions and why first impressions can be so impactful.
Yes.
So I don't know how to, I don't think that I can anonymize this with the golf club. Like, it's hard for me. When I met Alex, my husband, I feel like I don't have to anonymize him.
You don't have to anonymize your husband, no.
Okay. When I met my husband,
it's more if we're worried about, like, oh God, this is a really horrible story. So about Alex, we'll have to do it a lot. Ha ha! Zing! Take that, Alex! Pow pow! Alex is one of my best friends in the world, for the record.
I thought I was your best friend in the world.
No, you are my best friend. He is one of my best friends. You're the queen. He's in the court.
Okay, fair enough. He's in the club.
Yeah.
When I met Alex, I was going through a rough patch with one of my best friends, to the point where, like, we weren't talking, and this person was very mad at me and feeling abandoned. I was very mad at them because I felt like I had no support in a very stressful, scary time in my life, and they were so.
I want to make sure that you're not sitting here being like, man, she's really ragging on Peter right to his face.
I felt very unsupported by them in a very stressful time, to the point where when we were in the same room, they would literally turn their head and walk away. And I felt very abandoned in the way that I guess they felt abandoned. And so when I met Alex and I was explaining this dynamic with this former friend, he only heard the stories as someone who let me down, someone who hurt me, someone who caused me to cry multiple times in his presence. And so when we resolved our differences years later, it was really hard for Alex to rethink about how he was introduced to the idea of this person and reconsider why I would even want them back in my life, because he wasn't there for any of the good times. The half a decade of friendship that we had prior to that moment, all he knew was this person who abandoned me. And I mean, everything's fine now, but that was a really, really difficult thing for us to navigate.
Yeah, it's quite common, I feel, that if you have someone close in your life, you tend to hear the venting. Like that's kind of how friendship operates on a fundamental level. Like you tend to hear like the 15 bad things and not the 200 good things, because you don't need to vent the 200 good things in a way that or more accurately, you don't need to like unpick and work through the good stuff in the way that you do the bad stuff. So all the members of the golf club, when it comes to like bosses, dating, like interpersonal relationships, all of them, you tend to by default hear the bad stuff. We've talked about on the show before about the fact that I am very complimentary. Like I rave about the people in my life. And part of that is that my standards for people are so high that if I have to vent about someone like more than half a dozen times, I tend not to keep them in my life, which I realize is maybe its own thing that I need to work through. But the people in my life are typically amazing, but also I make a really concerted effort to discuss how in love I am with my girlfriend, or how much I love you, or like someone in the golf club once said, Peter, it is impossible to be friends with you without hearing about how amazing Nicole is. And then I finally met Nicole. I think we've told this story before. I finally met Nicole, and she was even better than you said. So there's a little compliment for you. But it is true that if you're around me, you hear the good stuff, not because there's no bad stuff. I try to really curate my life so there is less bad stuff for standing on the foundation of giraffe necks that we talked about, but also because I'm very vocal about the pleasant things in my life. But you're absolutely right. Like if you meet someone and they're having a fight with their boyfriend, actually this is really, really relevant in writing as a writing tool. For a long time, my favorite author and blogger was a man named Ferret Steinmetz. And he wrote this kind of novella, I can't remember the name, Sauerkraut Station. He wrote this novella, Sauerkraut Station, which it opens with these two people becoming best friends. And then they disappear and they reconnect by the end, spoilers. But it was really, really important for the story that we established, like I was involved. It was really important for the story that the audience understands how tight this friendship is. And in his early drafts, he opened with like a bit of a fight happening between them so they could repair it, become friends. But everyone read that and walked away being like, oh, these two hate each other. Like there's just something about if the first impression you get of someone is a fight or negative, it really does stick in your head. Absolutely.
And you introduced me to a term that kind of works in the reverse when someone introduces you to something that's beautiful. Like you called it the Hagrid.
Yes. This is an old Peterism.
If you came up with this.
This is one of mine. Yeah. So I'll briefly describe the Hagrid, because you're right. This is very relevant. This is super relevant to rules break. So that when I first joined the golf club, I loved it. I was like, this place is amazing. There's all these people here, and just like me, they all love golf. This is wonderful. I suddenly knew all these golfers, and I'd grown up in a land with no golf, so to suddenly know all these golfers, it was like this really transcendent experience for me to be like, I feel like I've met these amazing people. I'm happy here. And so the first person that I met later turned out to be quite an arsehole. Like just not a nice guy, problematic for a few different reasons. But because he was my window into the golf club, into this wonderful world of golf players, I associated him really strongly with positivity. And so it took me, because of rules brain, it took me like a year to be like, oh, I don't like this guy. And now that I think about it, no one else really likes this guy either. And I call it the Hagrid, because the Harry Potter's literal introduction to the world of magic, the wizarding world, whatever, is through Hagrid. And so we love Hagrid. He's the one who turns Dudley's butt into a tail and turns him into a pig and blah, blah, blah. Like he's the one who shows him Diagon Alley. But if you read the books, Hagrid's kind of useless. He's kind of like, he causes a lot of problems throughout all the books. And yeah, he's lovable because of character, etc., etc. But he's kind of horrible.
Just a bumbling nobody.
Yeah, he's kind of an idiot with no friends who like only have, and like they stick up with him and they make sure he keeps his teaching job, which he 1,000% does not deserve. And so my term for this, man, what a great call. My term for this is the Hagrid, because it's exactly that. And you, if you start looking for it in your own life, if you're in your own golf club, then yeah, start thinking like, hey man, the person who introduced me to this, do I actually like them?
Or do I like the thing that they brought into my life? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Man, what a great call. So rules brain, I think as with everything we're talking about in this podcast, it's really useful to have a term for these things. Like I said, I was literally going to search our chat right now and just see how often we say rules brain because I suspect it's near constantly.
In the hundreds.
It's so much.
I wonder when the first time was. I mean, it must have been like pre-pandemic.
So rules brain is it's just useful to have a term for it. The first example I can find is June 6, 2020. Fun fact. The line that I said is, because of your rules brain, I do this too, which is why I recognize it. You're in all or nothing mode, which I think is adjacent, but is very relevant. July 10th, 2020, your rules brain is showing. Sorry, I'll just read out our entire chat. But yeah, hundreds of times it's come up in our chat. So it's useful to just have a term for this thing. So you can be like, whoa, why did this happen? Oh, right, rules brain. Why else is it useful to be aware of rules brain, and how can you use it?
Well, I think it's useful so that you can overcome it. Like if you understand why you're thinking the way you're thinking or why you're surprised by a thing, you have the ability to kind of step outside of it and make a different choice that you might not have made had you not recognized it for what it is.
Yeah. So the main thing you can do is identify it, exactly like you said, and B, consciously reassess the situation, which for my brain and your brain is shockingly hard to do. Like really genuinely, like I said, with this golf club sponsor, I was fully prepared to be like, okay, let's dedicate the next 6 months of my life to like wooing this golf club sponsor. And you were like, Peter, they don't have money anymore. And it had not like they had, this is obviously an analogy, they had money, therefore they always have money. Also, just personally, I was a starving artist for a long time. I was dirt broke in debt for 15 plus years, and I'm not wealthy nowadays, but I'm not dirt broke in debt. I can have takeout multiple times a week. What a crazy world I live in. And it is genuinely like difficult for me to remember, like, oh, I'm not dirt broke. I'm not like scrimping and saving to pay off my credit cards. Again, I'm not wealthy, but I have money, and that's another form of rules brain. It's identity.
It's interesting that you brought up it in terms of money, because we were recently having a conversation where you were watching a movie and it was someone bought something for a very high monetary figure, and what you internalized was that it was a lot of money, right? That was the end result. And then you watch that movie again, and it was something like $20,000, and not that isn't a lot of money, but it's not the overwhelming wow. Like how could they have done that? That was the point of the initial interpretation.
This has come up a few times lately. I've realized that for whatever reason, I don't retain numbers. I'm just bad at numbers. So what I do, and I think this is quite common, is I apply an emotional weight to the number and remember the emotional weight.
Based on vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not a good way to do it.
Especially when you're in a very growth-oriented like career with ambition. Hopefully that's going to scale, right? The term a lot is going to increase over time.
Yeah, I'll actually tell the specific example. I was watching The Castle, which if you're an Australian, you've heard of. If you're not, you probably haven't. And in The Castle, this guy owns this really crappy house in the suburbs of Melbourne, and the airport wants to buy his property. And so they make him an offer of $40,000. And he's like, that's crazy. We would never sell for $40,000. So they come back with an offer of $60,000, and that's their final offer. And because I watched this movie as a kid, $40,000, $60,000 is so much money. When you're a kid and your net worth is $7, $40,000 is a lot. So I was telling this story and I told it as like, yeah, they offered like $200,000 and they came back with $1 million. And then watching the film, I was like, oh, those are like orders of magnitude off. And then it came up again really recently when my friend told me how much was in a 401k. And I was just like, oh, that's a big number. And so then I was talking to you and my other two sisters, and I was like, yeah, she has about $500,000 in a 401k. And you were like, that's a lot of money to have in a 401k at her age. And so I went back and asked her, and it's $100,000, which is still very good. I'm not saying she's doing poorly.
but that's on track with what someone at 35 would have if they were prioritizing investing in their 401k. I was like, what kind of job would you have? What percentage of your income would you be contributing to get to $500,000 at 35? Like, the math was not mathing.
And I'd taken it one step further, which is so ridiculous, and been like, she has $500,000, which is a normal amount to have. Therefore, a normal amount to have is $500,000. None of this is true. Like, it's this house of cards where once you start examining it and you like tap it, the whole thing collapses. And this is a funny story, but I ran a business. I ran a business for years.
It's so important in business to evaluate rules brain, because that's when you get into sunk cost fallacy and how you go deeper because you're not reevaluating circumstances, even just like forcing yourself to sit down and look at things with a new perspective, with time, with change, because otherwise you're just going to keep doing the things that you're doing and not think about it.
Yeah. I think anything that you and I have run together, we're not dissing other people, can stay out of the golf club for ease. I had some very early successful Kickstarters. My first two made $90,000 each, which back in the day was a lot. Nowadays, that would be an abject failure. Back in the day, that was like, whoa, this guy's making serious money. And it was because I was pricing everything on vibes. I was like, how much should it cost? About this much. And how much should shipping be? About this much. And then you came into the company and were like, wait, what are the quotes? I'm like, no, it's just like, this is what feels right.
This is vibes.
This is what the numbers should be. And so this is where I got a lot of my debt from these. But then I think years later, was like, man, maybe I should relaunch this old game. And you had to be like, rules brain, Peter. Like, you're assuming the level of success you had when everything was wildly underpriced and the market was different and this and that. And because of rules brain, genuinely, I was like, well, I did it in 2016 and it made $90,000. And I'm better at it now, and Kickstarters make more now. Therefore, if I do it in 2020, it'll make $300,000. And you had to like sit down and be like, no, unpick those assumptions. Like, genuinely look at all the assumptions that you're making and don't make them, you idiot.
I think that's what I said verbatim. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I came into the industry with a little bit of business understanding, like basic accounting and cost analysis. I'm really grateful that I had that experience outside the industry, because first impressions are so important. And you have kind of respected my input in a way that you wouldn't have had you met me at the very beginning of my career when I was making dumb mistakes. I could just be the smart person who told you not to price things at $9 without looking at a quote.
When we came into the golf club, someone sat down and was like, here is how you do all the golf club accounting correctly. And we were like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. And I talked to one of his friends and he was like, he told you that? That's hilarious. Because when he entered the golf club, he didn't do any of that. He just played it all by ear. And again, this is kind of rules brain. Like, we came in and the guy knew what he was talking about. So we're like, oh, this guy was clearly born with an understanding of accounting and how to correctly do the books of a golf club. And his friend who saw him make all the mistakes and do all the learning was like, this guy has no idea what he's doing and never will. These are both really good examples of rules brain. And that actually brings up something else that I wanted to mention, which is that people change. And there's this really kind of cynical attitude like in media and in life of like, this person was X, therefore they will always be X. Anyone who knew me in my 20s, especially my early 20s, anyone who knew me then, I hope would accept that people can change, because who I was, even when you met me, to who I am now, feel to me like wildly different people.
But it's interesting how our thoughts kind of freeze that person in as a moment in time. Yeah. And I cannot picture the people that I went to high school with as 30-something-year-old adults with children. Like the idea that they are not in their 17-year-old personalities, just it's impossible for me to envision.
Yeah, a really, really, really obvious but dumb example of rules brain. I left Brisbane, where I lived in Australia for a little bit, in 2009. That is 17 years ago. I had a friend who had a baby. In my mind, they have a baby. Do you know how time works, Nicole?
I believe that baby must be 74 by now.
That's right. Yeah, Nicole compensates rules brain by just wildly overestimating. She goes too
Yeah.
far the other way. Like that person can vote next year. Like that's
That's
wild to
bananas.
me because in my brain, literally haven't seen or thought about this person since then. Therefore, they are whatever age they are, and they have a baby.
If you were about to go meet that person, you might stop and think like, "Oh, that, this child Golfy, he was one when I saw him last. He must be 17 now. Like you can do that math, but it takes sitting down actually thinking about it to like
Yeah.
force your brain to internalize it.
I'll give you a really dumb example of where I didn't do that. One of my close friends lives in Brisbane, and I haven't seen her in well over a decade now. Well, at the time that I was going back with my girlfriend and with Henry last year, hadn't seen her for well over a decade. So I texted her, I was like, hey, do you want to meet up? You should bring your daughter, and then, your daughter can meet my son. And she was like, my Peter, I have 5 kids now. But because she had one when I left, therefore she has one kid. Like that's how it works. Rules brain.
This is where we need a sponsor of like Facebook or something to say like
Yeah.
keep up with your friends.
Oh, so I use Monarch. Did you put me onto Monarch? I genuinely can't remember.
I did.
Not a sponsor. I'll put a link in the thing that I think I get $50 if you sign up, but like it's not an official sponsor by any means. I use Monarch as a way to actively combat my number deficiency. So every single week I have a scheduled sit down and manually approve every transaction in my bank account because I round everything down or up. So, for example, I recently got a $7,000 payment from a publisher, which in my mind I'm like, oh, that's basically 10,000. And then I had a $7,000 credit card bill that I had to pay, and I'm like, oh, that's about 5,000. So in my mind, I had $5,000 because I rounded one thing up and one thing down. Doesn't work like that. So I use Monarch again, not sponsoring. This is just what I actually do in my life. To every single week sit down and approve every transaction and be like, oh, I'm spending $45 a month on this thing I don't use. Like it was useful when I signed up for it. It's not anymore. And it's very easy to be like, oh, $45, I can afford that. That's, whatever. From this same activity, I make $200 a month. Therefore, it's profitable. But like dealing with the dollars and cents is my way of combating rules brain. I keep a daily journal. I write down what I did the previous day every single day because otherwise, like you just don't notice things changing. Oh, I weigh myself every day because relying on myself.
One, yeah.
Yeah, looking in the mirror, I feel like I'm the same weight. Even when I was down 50 pounds, looking in the mirror, I couldn't see a difference. So I need the hard numbers. This is my way of dealing with rules brain. I need hard numbers, I need hard data, I need hard facts, I need the actual thing to prove what reality looks like. Because otherwise, I can't trust my brain.
Yeah, I definitely need to see, I need to see the scale because otherwise, when I'm not focused on eating well and exercising, that's when I stop going on the scale. And that's when it's like, oh, where'd that 10 pounds come from? Yeah.
But do you know what the genuine number one thing that you can do to combat rules brain is? And this is not easy, but it is so ludicrously valuable.
What?
You, Nicole. We have talked before about having a friend who knows your history. Sorry, off podcast. We've talked about this in real life, which I know is a crazy concept relating to us. No. Where like someone who, like for example, you were friends with me through my first marriage. I was friends with you through your first marriage. You were friends with me before I had kids and after I had kids, through various businesses, etc. So when I say a thing, context is the word we use. You have the context. And this is why I say it's really hard because if you've had the same best friend from high school since you're 5, it's really easy. If you've just moved to a new city, it's really hard. But having people who have the context of your life is the number one thing you can do to combat rules brain. You and I discuss our lives a lot, and you are able to be like, Peter, that thing's not true anymore. It was once, and vice versa.
That makes a lot of sense because if you had just said, hey, Nicole, who is good at business in this industry that I'm thinking about, moving forward in, I made X amount of Kickstarter back in 2019. Therefore, I should make Y now. And if I didn't have that context of like why and what the circumstances were, I'd just be like, yeah, makes sense. Guess so. Good luck. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. For me, the biggest, most useful applying of the rules brain concept was the golf club sponsor because I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. It was not honestly that fun to work with them for various reasons, but we need that money. And you were like, but they don't have that money. And I never would have gotten there. Like, I could have just looked at the thing that told you what the money they had, and it just never would have occurred to me because once money, always money.
Well, because you have to purposely like think to look for the information, right?
Yeah.
You have to, has to occur to you that that something might have changed for you to seek out the data to see if it has.
Yeah. There's a sort of, I don't want to say a movement or get like too political or anything like that, but there's this idea that like chosen family is better than your natural family, which, you know, as someone who's chosen you as a sister, I absolutely understand the value of chosen family for sure. But the thing about your like flesh and blood family who you grew up with is they have all the context. They have all of it. Like my other sisters and I grew up in the same country, in the same house with the same parents. I don't know what you were doing. And so we have all the context. And I'm not saying like, therefore stay with toxic families, but like there is a value to that I feel is kind of not stated explicitly as much anymore.
That's an interesting point, but I will argue, I will counter that point with the fact that, sure, rebut. You're a butt. I will rebut that point with the fact that people tend to fall back into habits that they have around other people. I am a worse version of myself with my family. I like subconsciously, the bickering, it becomes a subconscious force of habit that I can't break free of. And also that same perspective of I can't imagine the person from high school being any different. I apply that to my family as well. My sister, in more ways than not, is still a 17-year-old that I fight with, and it drives me crazy. And I love her from a distance, but together we still have that dynamic, even though I don't fight with anyone else in my life in that same way.
Yeah, no, that's true. So what I'm saying is just have a great family who you love and get along with perfectly. It's that easy, guys.
Oh, why do I even need this podcast then?
if you don't have a family like that, then yeah, like finding a chosen family, and you and I talk a lot, and so that helps. But like there is a unique value in having people who have been in your life for a long time. I'm not saying therefore put up with toxicity or anything like that, but I'm saying like there is a value to that is really, really hard to overstate because they just have the context, and especially if you are prone to rules brain like you and I are, especially then, it's so valuable to have someone you can discuss things with and trust that they will bring stuff up that you wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. I mean, to that point of having someone who also has context, perspective matters. Sometimes our memories fail us and our perspective is impacted by what we were going through at the time or what we're going through now. So having a third party to remember the details differently, even if it's not a rules brain situation, is also very impactful.
The other aspect of rules brain, quickly before we go into our segments, is I have our chat open where I search for rules brain. I was like, oh, we use it this way a lot. Is this kind of strict adherence to definitions, and this is maybe a whole separate topic, but you know, so for me, one of my greatest weaknesses that I will happily announce on the podcast is that I believe the things that people tell me. So in the golf club, one time someone was like, hey, I'm a professional golfer. And I was like, oh, they have said they're a professional golfer. Therefore, they're really good at golfing. This is just a fact. This is just a simple fact. Whereas in fact, they're a professional golfer because they taught kids to golf, or, you know, something that doesn't actually connect to skill in golf. But in my mind, the words that they said tied one to one with like, here is now an immutable fact of the universe. That's another form of rules brain that I think I'm particularly susceptible to. And in a chat, it came up when you were like, wait, but they used this word and this has this definition, therefore this. Forgetting that people could just be bad at words. People cannot understand what words mean. And I know.
That makes me so mad.
That's literally what you said in this chat. You're like,
I'm nothing if not consistent.
So mad.
I'm nothing if not consistent.
Let's go on to our segments. So first of all, Nicole, what do you have on your desk?
So I think this is kind of a lesson in objects permanence, because I have a wrapper of Easter candy. And so Easter candy is a big thing, and my kids are very competitive,
candy driven,
and possessive. And so we have to separate, like, this is Nathan's bag of candy that he found, and this is Jack's bag of candy that he found. And in the moment, like, we'll make sure it's even and Jack didn't find too many eggs or whatever.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they have two separate bags. And weeks after it actually was Easter, it's really important to them that no, Nathan can't go into my bag. That one's my bag. The other one is Nathan's bag. It's very important to them that they don't go into each other's bags. Little do they know that when they go to bed, I eat from both of their bags.
How did this tie to object permanence? Oh, because once it's out of the bag, it doesn't exist for them anymore.
Exactly. They never notice.
I'm going to give a similar example, which is I have floss on my desk. Why do I have floss on my desk? Because you have to floss every day. And if floss is in a bathroom cabinet, I'm not going to see it, and so I'm not going to remember to floss every day. If it's sitting on my work desk in front of me, at some point in the day, I'm going to glance down and see it and be like, oh, right, got to floss. And so, yeah, for me, a lot of the object permanence thing is just literally just putting stuff on the surface if it's a thing that you have to deal with, and hiding it I remember my example, and hiding it if it's a thing that you don't need access to. So, for example, on my phone, all the good apps for me are on the homepage, like reading and this and that, and the bad ones are hidden in a menu. Now, I will muscle memory through those menus because that's how dopamine works. But when I open my phone, if I see the Kindle app, I'm more likely to read a book than if I see the Facebook app. I'm going to not even think about it, click on Facebook. I remembered my truly excellent rules grade example. It is one of my favorite stories about you, and it cracks me up. Yes, I tell this story a lot. Are you ready?
You're supposed to anonymize me when you're talking shit. Okay.
And it has to do with candy. This is all tied together. So, and object permanence. This is the perfect story to end the episode. You like candy. You like chocolate. You really enjoy some particular brand of chocolate. I can't remember what. So you had your husband, Alex, put it on a very, very high shelf. Do you remember this?
It sounds like me.
So it was on a very high shelf in your kitchen. I was staying with you, as I often do, and Alex was out, and you said, Peter, can you reach up and get me the candy from the high shelf? Because then I can have this candy. And I said, I'm not going to do that, Nicole. But do you know what you could do? You could get a chair and get it yourself. And this had never occurred to you. You were like, oh my God, I've been able to reach this candy the whole time because rules brain. You were like, I am not told enough to reach the candy, therefore I cannot reach the candy. And so it's like introducing tools to the apes.
Let me elaborate on this. I believe I was pregnant at some point recently, so when he has used that trick on me, I also can't get up. It doesn't occur to me to go climbing on chairs with my 9-month pregnant belly to go get candy. Okay, to his credit, I probably asked him to hide from me to save me from myself. So this isn't like withholding candy from his pregnant wife, but the idea of climbing up on a ladder or a chair is just like, it's just not a thing. So of course, 3 months later, when the baby is long out of my body, it's still not occurring to me that I can get up on this chair.
Because rules brain.
And you know what? It hit me twice because I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering that story correctly, he had also eaten it by the time that I had thought to ask you to get it for me. So it wasn't even freaking there anyway. And that also did not occur to me as an option.
I'm going to tell an even meaner one now because I've remembered it. And so you and I and one of my girlfriends were hanging out, and we were talking about how horses came across from Russia to Alaska and then down into the Americas, or vice versa. I can't remember which. And this is another one of my favorite because I think you're amazing. I tell amazing stories about you all the time. So these rare nuggets of not amazing are true gems. They're precious in their rarity. You said, wait, but how did they get from Alaska down to like the main US? And we were like, they walked, Nicole. They walked because you were so used to seeing the map of the US where it's the US and then Alaska just floating by itself that it didn't occur.
I knew it was connected through Canada, but it didn't occur to me that they would be able to cross borders. Like, the borders weren't always there, duh.
Right, yeah, they've existed now, therefore they've always existed. That's actually a really good point about histocracy and like, baby boys are blue, baby girls are pink, right? That is very recent. That's like 1910s. Before that, all babies were pink. No, sorry, all babies were blue, and it changed for historical reasons. Or even stuff like women having a lower sex drive than men is how society treats it. Back in the ancient Greek days, women could only be attended by eunuchs, that is, men who have been like forcibly castrated, because women were so high sex drive they could not be trusted to be around men. So many things that we are just like, this is just how the world works, are actually really new ideas. This is a much more artificial example, but like red state Republican, blue state Democrat, that's from the year 2000. That's from within our lifetime. Before that, it was blue state.
That's basically the 1900s.
Yeah. Before that, it was blue state incumbent, red state challenger. And so because the 2000 election was so hotly contested, the incumbent was the Democrats, Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And so like all of these, like there's so much stuff that you're like, this is just how humans are. And you have to really be like, no, this is actually a really, really recent societal development. The first programmers were women. We think of programming as a male job. No, it was literally like women were the first computers, they were called, and programs and stuff like that. There's so much stuff that because we rules brain it, we're like, this is just how the world is and has always been. The borders that horses can't cross. Okay, I'll give you one more thing on my desk because it's been sitting here the whole time. I have a little C's candy, not a sponsor, because I'm trying to watch my diet at the moment, and so I work really well with strict restrictions, and so I'm allowed one of these a day. So I was like, oh, I'll use this as my thing, and then the floss I felt more relevant. But I've been not eating this all podcast recording. It's been staring at me, and I don't want to do this a second time, so you're getting a second thing off my desk today. Nicole, what's our audience submitted question of the day?
That is a good question.
Today's comes from Avenel Wing. I think she's okay with us saying her surname. If not, we'll bleep it.
You've bitten off more than you can chew. How do you rescope the project so it fits your capacity?
This is a very, very, very good question.
I like how relevant it is to rules braining, because sometimes you have to like evaluate the fact that it has completely scope creeped.
Yes, I was about to say there's a really useful term called scope creep. It comes from video games, but it's just when a project, you decide to start adding stuff, not realizing that, well, especially if there's interlocking systems, everything that you add is actually adding like 5 things, and then adding another one is now adding 6 things. And so like projects can really balloon out of control. So I'm very curious to hear your answer, because you're sort of more on the logistical end of things. What do you do in the golf club when the new extension wildly gets out of hand? How do you rein that back in? I'm gonna eat my chocolate while you
Panic attack, obviously. I mean, honestly, it just really depends on what the situation is. I first evaluate like how many of the things that have been added are actually necessary. First, let's take stock of like what we agreed on. And it's so important to have things in writing, especially like job requirements, things like that, where it's like, these are the expectations, and then kind of comparing them to how things have evolved over time to evaluate what that kind of discrepancy you're looking at. And then kind of working backwards from there and seeing how much of it is actually necessary to continue a path forward.
One of the things that I really love about living in the year of our Lord 2026 is the proliferation of AI transcription, where like every meeting, I now just have a little text file on my computer so I can be like, wait, did we agree to this? Did we say that? And memory is horribly unreliable. I mean, a lot of our examples today are about how useless memory is. And so just having these little transcripts, I can be like, no, when we started this project, it was meant to be 3 instead of 4 rooms. Like it was meant to be this. It has creeped over time. So just having the sanity check of, was this the original intent, is valuable just by itself.
I think that can be its own tangent into rules brain. I think a lot of people rules brain as AI good or AI bad, and I really like AI for circumstances where someone was not going to get paid to do this job, right?
Yep.
There's not a situation where you and I are on a Zoom call and we were going to pay a third party to take notes of our call, right?
I mean, your kids got to get jobs at some point, Nicole.
That is an instance where like I am very pro AI, and I love that we have utilization of those kinds of
tools.
Yeah. Resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is a...
Yeah, it's very easy to make everything black and white. So
how do you rein back?
Firstly, I'm very bad at this. If you've seen the game that I made with your husband, Critter Kitchen, it is a massive box of cool stuff for a very simple game that your company also published, I think, before
My
you went to the
company.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a Nepo sign. In fact, you were a Nepo hire.
I'm the Nepo hire. Peter wanted to hire me before you ever got a game sign. So
just for the record, Peter is also the owner of that company. Not I want to hire you every day. I don't have the I have the Vibe money. I can Vibe pay you.
We've lost the thread. I work at the golf club.
Yes. And so scope creep is genuinely a really hard thing to combat, especially as a creative. What I try to do, it's funny, I was talking about this, I sometimes have people reach out and be like, hey, I finished this game or this project or this book or whatever, and I want to put it on Kickstarter. How do I make that effective? And they're just fundamentally asking the wrong question. Because if you want something to be successful on Kickstarter, which is not the question, but now this is what I'm answering, you've got to build it from the ground up like that. All my Kickstarter games were built from day one to go on Kickstarter because it's a very different process than building a game that's not designed to go on Kickstarter. You just have to care about different stuff baked into the core of the design in the game. And so my unhelpful answer for how do you rescope a project is I aggressively scope at the start and then try to stick to that scope. And that's discipline and that's practice and that's having done it before. But I'm working on a co-design at the moment, and my co-designer, I think I mentioned this in the previous episode, is just very happy to like add stuff in. And I'm the no guy. I'm the you in our like old business relationship. My job is just to be like, nope, we're not going to do that. Nope, we're not going to do that. His job is to suggest something so amazing I can't say no to it. And that has happened, but it's very rare. And just by like saying no to all of this scope stuff before it can even go off the ground, you don't have to solve this problem.
So basically be very aware of it as an issue and aggressively work to not have it happen.
Yes. There's also a very unhealthy quote that I live my life by. Don't worry about biting off more than you can chew. Bite as much as you can and chew as hard as you can. So this has led to my multiple successful careers, but also an extremely unhealthy work-life balance. So don't take that advice.
And a lot of confidence. A lot of confidence.
But genuinely, like if I got to the point where I was like, okay, we've got too much. List out your choices. Can we move the date? Probably not. But if you can move the date, and you should move the date. What can we cut while still delivering what we want? Actually, I've got a game going back to Kickstarter probably around the time this is launching, and I way overdid it. And the publisher said, "Cool, this 1/3 of what you've done, that's now a sequel that will do in 2 years' time. This 1/3 of what you've done, this is now the expansion for this game. This is the game." Like the publisher really genuinely effectively rescoped it in a way that I didn't have to very happily as not the publisher. So yeah, can you rescope it? What can you cut? Can you move the deadline? Or can you just knuckle down and get it done? And that is my default answer. That's not a healthy answer, but that's what I will tend to do. I'll be like, cool, let's just do some all-nighters and get it done.
Sometimes in business, which is the frustrating thing, if you trust the wrong people and they don't deliver on the timelines that they say, you have to hire extra resources. You have to hire extra resources to compensate for the extra labor.
Yeah. Do we have the budget? Do we have the time? Do we have the this? Okay, what can we deliver without making everyone mad? Or sometimes, how much do we care about how mad they are? That is everything from us. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, we have an email address now. Our email address is no, not fun. That's my other podcast. Our email address is life@blueprints.fm. So if you want to have your question featured in an episode, life@blueprints.fm. You can check out the podcast at blueprints.fm. That's our show. Any final words, Nicole?
Well, because we haven't mentioned her this episode, I have to say, bye, Alyssa!
Bye, Alyssa! The least mentioned of your episode ever!